300 warships entered the battle. None came back. That was 6 hours ago. From orbit, the capital world of Lyris still looked peaceful. Its oceans still shimmered. Its cities still glowed with the soft amber warmth of billions of lives in motion. People eating breakfast, arguing with children, falling in love, going to work, all of them pretending, consciously or not, that the war had not already reached them. But in high orbit, the fleet was gone. Not defeated. Gone. 300 warships had held the outer system against the approaching armada of the Korth Dominion. They had bought 6 hours. Long enough to evacuate the shipyards. Long enough to send the final warning. Long enough for the coalition to understand that there would be no reinforcements coming from that direction. Then the transmission ended. No survivors. No distress signals. No wreckage worth recovering. 300 ships, gone in 6 hours, and the enemy hadn't even slowed down. Inside the grand assembly chamber of the coalition, the silence was heavier than gravity. 7 species sat in a circle that had not been broken in 4 centuries. Empires had risen and fallen outside these walls. Trade networks had stretched across half the spiral arm. Wars had come and gone, fought and resolved and forgotten. The coalition had endured all of it. Until now. High Coordinator Elandra stood at the center platform, her silver crest dimmed with exhaustion. She had not slept in 2 days. The tactical projections behind her told a story no leader should ever have to speak aloud. But she spoke it anyway, because that was what leadership meant at the end of everything. The Korth main fleet has entered the inner corridor, she said. No one interrupted. They destroyed the Orion defense line in 8 minutes. Still silence. They will reach the Lyris system in 9 standard days. A low ripple moved through the chamber. Not panic. Not outrage. Something worse than both. Resignation. Admiral Torvek of the Drasen leaned forward, his armored plates grinding softly. Fleet strength. Elandra didn't want to answer. She answered anyway. Remaining combat vessels across all member states. 412. The number hung in the air like a verdict. The Korth Dominion had entered the war 15 years ago with nearly 3,000 warships. Even after years of brutal attrition, intelligence estimates placed their operational strength above 1,000. 412 against 1,000. The mathematics of extinction. Ambassador Sel of the Varine spoke quietly, almost carefully, as though the numbers might get worse if asked about too loudly. Civilian evacuation capacity? 8%, Elandra replied. That time, the chamber reacted. 8%. 92% of coalition population centers would still be inside Korth-controlled space within 3 months. Billions of people who would never see the evacuation ships. Billions who would wake up one morning to find their world had changed ownership, and that the new owners had very specific ideas about labor quotas. General Kethra, commander of the Miran Defense Forces, rose to her full height. Then we commit everything to the Lyris defense. We make them pay for every kilometer. They won't slow down, Torvek said. You've seen the battle reports. Their formation doctrine ignores losses. They burn through fleets the way a star burns hydrogen. They can't ignore physics, Kethra snapped. They ignore casualties, Torvek replied. That's enough. Another voice broke the argument from the philosopher's circle. We should open surrender negotiations. Every head turned. Ambassador Ven of the Salari did not look ashamed. The Korth do not negotiate, Kethra said. They accept submission, Ven replied. They preserve labor populations. Infrastructure remains intact if resistance ceases. Slavery is not survival. Extinction is not dignity. The argument spread through the chamber, echoing one that had repeated for 5 years, growing older and more tired with every repetition. 2 sides. 2 options. Both of them impossible. Fight and die. Submit and live, if you called it living. Coordinator Elandra did not join the debate. She had already reviewed the Korth occupation records in full. Every page of them. Industrial quotas. Population control. Forced relocation. Resistance suppression measured not in incidents, but in percentages of population removed. It was survival. She could not honestly call it more than that. The chamber doors opened without announcement, something that had not happened in coalition history. A tactical officer entered, his face stripped of any pretense of composure. Coordinator. Long-range sensors confirmed secondary Korth formations entering the sector. The projections shifted. Another fleet. Estimated strength, 200 ships. Combined with the main force already approaching, over 1,200 enemy vessels bearing down on Lyris. The argument stopped. No one spoke for a long moment. Then Admiral Torvek said what everyone already understood. We cannot win. Coordinator Elandra finally sat. For 4 centuries, the coalition had been the center of stability in this region of the galaxy. Trade, diplomacy, shared defense. 7 species building something stronger together than any could build alone. That wasn't a slogan. It was measurable. It was real. And now it was 9 days from being erased. How long? Ven asked quietly. Until total system collapse. Elandra checked the projection. If the Lyris defense fails, civilian infrastructure failure within 18 days. And after that, famine. 43 worlds depend on Lyris distribution. Silence again. Not the silence of shock. The silence of calculation, of brilliant minds accepting that the numbers did not add up, had never added up, and would not begin adding up in the 9 days remaining. Around the chamber, the leaders of 7 species began accessing emergency protocols. Population prioritization, cultural archive preservation, genetic storage, relocation lotteries. The administrative language of a civilization preparing to die. After a long time, the emergency planning slowed. Not because the work was finished, because everyone had reached the same conclusion simultaneously. There was nothing left to plan. Coordinator Elandra stood again. Her voice was quieter now, stripped of the formal cadence she had spent decades practicing. We will begin Phase 9 evacuation protocols. That order had never been issued before. It meant cultural triage. Which languages would be preserved? Which histories would be saved? Which parts of 4 centuries of civilization would be allowed to disappear forever? A junior delegate spoke before he realized he was speaking. There has to be another option. No one answered him. Because for 5 years, the coalition had asked every power within communication range for assistance. Every alliance. Every independent state. Every neutral trading bloc. No one had helped. Some were afraid of the Korth. Some had already submitted. Some had simply decided the coalition was no longer a worthwhile investment. The galaxy had moved on. 7 species were about to be erased. And no one was coming. Coordinator Elandra looked at the star map. For the first time in her career, she allowed herself to think the thought she had avoided for years. This is the end. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them. We will hold the assembly in continuous session, she said. All representatives remain available. If any option appears, no matter how unlikely, it will be considered. It was not hope. It was procedure. The delegates nodded. Because when a civilization is dying, even procedure becomes a form of courage. The assembly met in continuous session. No one left. Not because there was more to decide, but because leaving would have meant accepting that the decisions were final. So they stayed, and they watched the star map update, and the Korth icons moved 1 hour closer every hour with mechanical indifference. 9 days had become 8. 8 had become 7. A strange calm had replaced fear in the chamber. Once the future was known, there was very little left for fear to do. Admiral Torvek reviewed fleet deployment patterns for the 5th time, the conclusion unchanged. General Kethra calculated defensive formations that might extend resistance by minutes. Ambassador Ven drafted surrender language no one believed the Korth would accept. Procedure had replaced hope. That was all that was left. Then a voice spoke from the outer circle. There is one option we have not considered. The chamber did not react immediately. Desperation had already been exhausted. New ideas had nowhere left to land. Coordinator Elandra turned. The speaker was young. Fleet Commander Sira of the Valari, promoted 3 months ago after his entire command staff had been killed at the Hallen Gate. Not experienced enough to sit in the assembly under normal circumstances. But normal circumstances had ended years ago. What option? Elandra asked. Sira hesitated only briefly. We have asked every major power for assistance. Every alliance. Every independent fleet. Every neutral territory. That is correct, Torvek said. Every species, Sira continued, except one. That drew attention. Ambassador Sel leaned forward. Which species? Sira took a breath. Humans. The word landed in the chamber. And then, someone laughed. It wasn't cruel. It was the sound people make when exhaustion finally tips into disbelief. A laugh that says, I cannot believe this is what we've come to. The humans. General Kethra repeated. The Outer Rim isolationists. Torvek added. I am serious, Sira said. Ambassador Ven tilted his head. The human systems are not part of any interstellar network. They do not participate in trade councils or defense treaties. Most major powers don't even consider them worth tracking. They are independent, Sira said, and unconquered. That is because they are insignificant, Kethra replied. The Korth ignore them for the same reason everyone else does. They have nothing worth taking. No strategic resources, no advanced technology, no military presence of note. They have a fleet, Sira said. Torvek shook his head slowly. A regional defense force. Primitive by modern standards. Their ships still use kinetic weapon systems. Several delegates exchanged looks. Kinetic weapons. Physical projectiles. Technology most civilizations had abandoned thousands of years ago when directed energy had proven categorically superior in every measurable metric. Ambassador Cell spoke carefully. Human shield technology is minimal. Energy output is low. Their ship designs are inefficient, heavily armored in ways that sacrifice maneuverability and power distribution alike. They build like they expect to be hit, Torvek said. They build like they don't understand modern warfare, Kethra corrected. Coordinator Elandra studied Sira. There was something in his face, not confidence, exactly. Something more considered than that. You believe they can help us? She asked. I believe, Sira said slowly, that they are the only independent military power in this region that has not been destroyed, absorbed, or forced into alliance. In a region where multiple powers have risen and fallen over 2 centuries, humans have simply remained. That doesn't mean they are strong, Vince said. It means they survived, Sira replied. That quieted the room. Because survival, in this part of the galaxy, was not a small thing. Elandra turned back to the projection. Human space, a small cluster of systems near the outer edge of the region. Minimal expansion over 2 centuries. Almost no diplomatic presence. Every mission declined. Every trade offer ignored. Every request for military observers denied. They avoid external involvement, Cell said. Systematically. Deliberately. They are afraid, Kethra said. Or cautious, Sira answered. Even if they agreed to help, Torvek said. What could they provide? 50 ships? 100? Coalition projections placed their fleet strength at approximately 200 vessels. 200 ships. Against 1,200. The math hadn't changed. It would not be enough, Vince said. No, Sira agreed. It would not turn the tide. Then why suggest it? Kethra asked. Sira looked around the chamber. At the faces of 7 species who had run out of roads. Because no one else is coming. That ended the argument. The truth did not need emphasis. Coordinator Elandra looked at the star map for a long moment. Every civilization in this region had either expanded, allied, or been conquered. Humans had done none of those things. For 200 years, they had simply remained. Uninvolved. Unthreatened. Unchanged. She made her decision. We will send a message. Several delegates looked surprised. To a species that does not answer diplomatic contact? Cell asked. Yes. Requesting military assistance they cannot provide. Kethra added. Yes. Vince spoke quietly. And what will we offer them? Elandra did not hesitate. Anything they ask. That answer carried weight. Territory. Technology. Trade access. Political status. The coalition had never offered open concessions before. But the coalition was not negotiating from strength. It was negotiating from the edge of oblivion. The message was simple. Just 3 sentences, stripped of diplomatic language and formal protocol. Coalition forces facing total collapse. Requesting immediate military assistance. All terms negotiable. It was transmitted through every available relay, across thousands of light years, toward the quiet cluster of systems at the edge of the region. Then the assembly returned to its planning. Evacuations. Final defenses. Cultural preservation. The work of a civilization getting its affairs in order. No one expected a reply. Because for 2 centuries, humans had ignored the galaxy. And the galaxy had learned to ignore them back. Evacuation traffic increased. Civilian transport lanes became dangerously congested. Several outer colonies reported unrest as population limits were enforced. Fleet Command began preparing final engagement formations. The assembly met in silence more often now. Conversations became shorter. Decisions came faster. No one argued. There was nothing left to argue about. 3 days remained. The long-range communications network detected an incoming signal. It did not arrive through coalition channels. It came from the outer relay line, an irregular frequency, a non-standard transmission protocol. The routing software flagged it twice before it resolved. Origin, human space. The message was routed directly to the assembly. Coordinator Elandra read it once. Then again. Then she activated the chamber display. The message contained only 4 lines. We are coming. Fleet strength, 200 vessels. Arrival, 14 standard days. Prepare docking and tactical briefing. Terms to be discussed after engagement. The chamber remained silent. 14 days. The Korth would arrive in 3. They won't reach us in time, Torvek said. No, Elandra agreed. Then leaned forward slowly. Unless they are not coming here. The implication spread through the room like cold air. They intend to intercept, Kethra said quietly. Sira stared at the display. They didn't ask for details, he said. They didn't ask about enemy strength. They didn't ask what formation the Korth were flying, or what weapon systems they were carrying, or how many ships they'd need to face. He looked at Elandra. They didn't negotiate. She read the message one more time. Prepare docking and tactical briefing. They were coming to fight. They had already decided. And somewhere in those 4 lines, in what was not said as much as what was, something made the hair rise on the back of Elandra's neck. She couldn't name it yet, but she felt it. 3 days later, the Korth Advance Fleet entered the outer system. 900 vessels. Moving in tight formation, shield networks overlapping, weapons powered and active. They moved the way a predator moves through territory it already owns, without urgency, without hesitation, knowing that nothing ahead could stop them. Coalition fleet units took defensive positions near the inner orbital corridor. 412 ships, spread across 3 defensive layers. Every vessel armed. Every crew fully aware that survival probability had dropped below 15%. Evacuation convoys accelerated on every available route away from Lyris. 1 day remained. The human fleet was still 10 days away. Coordinator Elandra prepared the final system-wide address. The one you give when there is nothing left to promise. Then long-range sensors detected a hyperspace emergence at the outer boundary. 200 ships. 14 days had become 8. They accelerated their transit schedule, Cell said. Maximum engine output. That level of stress will shorten operational life significantly. They were not planning a long deployment, Sira said quietly. The human fleet advanced without requesting escort, without requesting clearance, without requesting anything at all. They moved directly toward coalition space, their formation tight, their speed constant, their trajectory pointed at one thing and one thing only. The approaching Korth Armada. 8 hours later, the human fleet entered visual range of the primary coalition station. Coordinator Elandra watched their approach from the observation deck, and she understood immediately why the intelligence summaries had dismissed them. They did not look like coalition ships. Coalition vessels were smooth, curved, and elegant, their hulls layered with sensor distortion fields and adaptive shielding patterns that shimmered faintly against starlight. They were beautiful in the way that precision engineering is always beautiful. Human ships were dark, angular, massive, layered in thick external plating that caught no light and reflected no beauty. Their surfaces showed no decorative structure, no flowing lines, no visible aesthetic consideration of any kind. They were not built to look like anything. They were built to do something. Weapon mounts covered their outer structure in dense clusters. Large rotating assemblies, reinforced firing rails, thick armored housings that made the ships look less like vessels and more like moving architecture built for one purpose. They are not optimized for energy efficiency, Cell observed. No, Torvek agreed. They are not. He paused. They are optimized for something else. A communication request appeared. Direct command channel. Coordinator Elandra accepted. The screen displayed a human female in a dark blue uniform. No ceremonial markings. No diplomatic insignia. Her posture was straight, her expression calm, her eyes carrying the particular quality of someone who has already made every decision that matters and is simply here to execute them. Admiral Elena Vasquez, she said. Human Expeditionary Command. Her voice carried no hesitation, no formality, no attempt to establish diplomatic warmth. Coordinator Elandra. We require enemy fleet data, defensive grid schematics, and your current operational strength. Elandra transmitted everything immediately. Vasquez reviewed it for less than 10 seconds. Understood, she said. No reaction to the numbers. No visible concern at the 6-to-1 odds. No moment of recalculation. Our fleet will take forward position. Coalition forces hold secondary line until further instruction. General Kethra leaned toward the display. Admiral, you are outnumbered 6-to-1. Vasquez nodded once. Yes. That formation will expose you to full enemy fire. Yes. Kethra paused. What is your tactical plan? There was a brief silence. Then Vasquez said, trust our positioning. The channel ended. The assembly chamber was quiet for a long moment. That's all. Cell asked. On the tactical projection, the human fleet was already moving. Their formation tightened into a forward wedge. Trajectory, direct intercept. No evasive pattern. No defensive dispersal. No attempt to use asteroid cover or orbital terrain. They were flying straight at the enemy. 200 dark ships. Against 900. And they were accelerating. Cirrus stared at the projection for a long moment. They're either very confident, he said quietly, or they don't understand what they're flying into. No one answered him, because no one knew which one it was. Supreme Commander Varek stood on the command platform of the Korth flagship Iron Dominion and watched the enemy assemble. The coalition fleet had taken defensive formation near the inner orbital corridor, exactly as predicted. Their shields were up, their weapons charged, their positions spread across layered lines in the textbook defensive posture of a force that knew it was outmatched and was simply trying to die in a way that cost the attacker as much as possible. For 112 vessels, less than half the strength they had fielded 5 years ago, Varek felt no satisfaction. This was not a battle. It was a conclusion, a formality to be completed before the real work of occupation could begin. Coalition forces holding defensive posture, his tactical officer reported. No reinforcement signatures detected from any sector. Expected, Varek said. They have nowhere else to go. Additional contacts detected, Commander. Varek turned slowly. Coalition reinforcements? No, Commander. Unknown design signatures. 200 vessels. Forward formation. Positioning, ahead of the coalition line. He studied the display. Dark hulls. Angular structures. Unusually heavy external plating. He searched his memory. Recognition came slowly. Human vessels, he said. The tactical officer nodded. Confirmed. Outer Rim Isolation Group. No prior combat record against Dominion forces. Varek studied the formation again. The human ships were not integrating with coalition lines. They were moving ahead of them, forming a tight forward wedge with their trajectory aimed directly at his fleet. Are they screening for the coalition? The officer asked. No, Varek said quietly. He leaned forward slightly. They're advancing. He had read the intelligence summaries on the human systems. Limited expansion, minimal diplomatic contact, technologically behind major powers in every meaningful metric. Their ships described as overbuilt, inefficient, outdated, carrying kinetic projectile systems that most civilizations had abandoned thousands of years ago. And now they were charging directly at a battle line that had dismantled fleets 10 times their size. Analysis, he ordered. The tactical officer ran a rapid scan. Human shield output significantly below coalition standards. Estimated failure under concentrated fire, less than 5 seconds. Weapons show kinetic mass driver systems. Limited effective range. Low energy signature. No plasma lances. No particle beam emitters. Several command officers exchanged glances. Kinetic weapons. Physical projectiles. Outdated by thousands of years. Possible explanation? Varek asked. Coalition desperation, the officer said. Humans offered support in exchange for concessions. Likely inexperienced in large-scale fleet doctrine. They may not understand engagement range at this scale. That explanation fit the data. Inexperienced command. Outdated technology. No understanding of what concentrated Dominion fire actually looked like. Varek watched the closing distance. The human ships were clearly visible now. Heavy armor plating. External weapon mounts everywhere. Minimal shield glow. They looked, he thought, less like warships and more like fortifications that someone had decided to put engines on. Primitive ships. Brave crews. Certain death. He felt something close to respect. It took a particular kind of courage to charge into certain destruction. Targeting priority? The officer asked. Human fleet first, Varek said. If the coalition is relying on them as a forward screen, their destruction will break what little morale remains. Full power to primary batteries. Synchronized firing pattern. I want the human formation eliminated in the first volley. Yes, Commander. Across 900 Dominion ships, weapon systems powered to maximum output. Plasma lance arrays aligned. Particle beam emitters reached critical charge. Shield networks synchronized across the entire formation in the deadly interlocking pattern that had dismantled fleets across half the region. On the main display, the human fleet continued its advance. No change in formation. No attempt to evade. No defensive dispersal. No emergency shield reinforcement. No evasive maneuver of any kind. They were flying straight into it. Accelerating. 30 seconds to engagement. 20 seconds. 10. Dominion targeting synchronization completed across all 900 ships. Total projected energy output exceeded planetary bombardment thresholds. Enough power to vaporize not just ships, but the orbital space around them. 5 seconds. The human ships did not slow. 4, 3, 2. All batteries locked, the officer said. Varric gave the order. Fire. 900 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously. Space became light. Converging plasma lances and particle streams crossed the void in a single overwhelming wave. Enough energy to vaporize fleets, stations, moons, to boil atmosphere off a world and crack its crust. A brightness so complete that coalition sensors whited out in the same instant. The human formation vanished inside it. On coalition command displays, General Kethra felt her hands tighten on the edge of the console. Coordinator Elandra did not speak. No shield network in the galaxy could survive that level of concentrated fire. The engagement had lasted less than 3 seconds. Then the light faded, and the human ships were still there, still advancing. On every coalition display, the same data appeared. Human shield output, 0. For a fraction of a second, no one understood what they were seeing. The analysis updated. Human shield systems had collapsed. All 200 vessels. Total failure time, 3 seconds. The shields were gone, completely gone, and the ships were still there. Still intact. Still moving forward at the same steady, relentless speed. That's not possible, someone whispered in the command chamber. The Dominion fleet was still firing. 900 ships, maximum output, sustained fire pouring into the advancing human formation. Without shields, any modern warship would have lasted seconds. Plasma lances alone would cut through structural layers before damage control could even initialize. Particle beams would tear internal systems apart. The human ships should have been gone. The tactical display showed something else. Integrity readings, green. No loss of formation. No debris signatures. No explosion markers. Not a single ship lost. Coordinator Elandra leaned toward the display. Confirmed sensor accuracy. Confirmed, the analyst said, voice unsteady. Direct energy impact across entire formation. Shields failed. Hull integrity unchanged. General Kethra stared at the numbers. That's not possible, she said. On the bridge of the Iron Dominion, Supreme Commander Varric was thinking the same thing. Damage assessment, he ordered. His tactical officer hesitated. That alone was extraordinary. Commander, there is no penetration. Varric turned slowly. Explain. Energy strikes are registering impact. Thermal transfer is occurring. But the energy is dispersing across the surface structure instead of concentrating at impact points. Hull temperature is rising, but structural integrity remains stable. That level of fire should have melted their outer layers. Yes, Commander. Then why hasn't it? The officer adjusted the scan. His voice changed. Material density readings are unusually high. External plating thickness, significantly above coalition standards. Significantly above anything in our records. How thick? A pause. Estimated 10 meters. Several officers looked up at once. 10 meters. No modern warship carried armor at that scale. The mass alone would cripple any conventional design. Speed, maneuverability, energy efficiency, all sacrificed. It was an engineering philosophy so alien to modern doctrine that no one had even thought to scan for it. Dominion weapons continued to pour energy into the advancing formation. Plasma flared across dark hulls and scattered. Particle beams splashed and dispersed. The fire continued at full intensity. The human ships did not slow. They did not turn. They continued straight through the fire as if it were weather. Focus fire on lead vessel, Varric ordered, his voice quiet now. Concentrate total output. 900 ships adjusted targeting. Every major battery locked onto the forward human flagship. A storm of energy converged on a single point in space. The impact lit space like a newborn star, a brightness sustained for 3 full seconds. The light faded. Hull integrity, 98%. It was still coming. The command bridge fell completely silent. No known material can withstand sustained plasma exposure at that level, one officer said. Thermal dispersal across the full surface structure, the tactical analyst replied. Energy is spreading instead of concentrating. Their entire hull is acting as a heat sink. Varric stared at the display. The word that formed in his mind felt wrong. Impossible. Ancient. Armor. Armor had been obsolete for thousands of years. Energy weapons had rendered physical protection irrelevant. Why carry mass when shields could absorb anything? But the Dominion's weapons were designed to overwhelm shields, to destroy the dispersal network and then burn through what remained. They had never been built to fight something with no shields at all, something that simply absorbed the hit and kept moving. Commander, the tactical officer said, voice finally breaking. The human fleet will enter their weapons range in 20 seconds. Varric stared at the display. 200 ships. Shields gone. Taking full sustained fire from 900 vessels. No losses. No structural collapse. No retreat. Still coming. He felt something settle in his chest that had no name in Dominion tactical doctrine. Uncertainty. On Coalition command channels, disbelief was turning into something else. Something no one had dared feel in 15 years. Hope. They planned this, General Kethris said. They expected their shields to fail. Her voice carried an edge of something. Awe, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. They wanted them to fail. On the tactical display, the human fleet was now less than 30,000 kilometers from the Dominion line. At that range, Coalition weapons would have struggled to engage effectively. Human weapon systems were activating. Energy output readings remained low. No plasma charge building. No particle buildup. No indication of any conventional weapon system preparing to fire. Instead, sensor arrays detected massive electromagnetic acceleration spikes. Magnetic rails. Mass drivers. Railgun architectures operating at scales no one had ever thought to field. Sierra's eyes widened. Kinetic systems, he breathed. On the bridge of the lead human vessel, Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the targeting solution complete across her formation. 200 ships. 200 synchronized firing solutions. Every round aimed at a critical system location. Not hull, not armor, not anything that shields were designed to protect. She gave a single order. Fire. Space did not flash. There were no beams. No visible energy discharge. No dramatic wall of light. For half a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the first Dominion ship disappeared. Not exploded. Not burned. It simply ceased to exist as a single structure. A tungsten composite projectile, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, had crossed the distance between the fleets in a time too small to measure. The Dominion ship's shield field, designed to disperse energy, to spread electromagnetic radiation across its surface, attempted to engage. The shield dispersed energy. It could not disperse mass. The projectile punched through the shield field without slowing. Through the forward hull without slowing. Through the reactor core in less than a millisecond. Through the rear structure and out the other side. The ship broke apart from the inside. Not from fire, not from heat, but from the catastrophic structural failure of a vessel that had never been designed to stop a physical object moving at that velocity. For seconds after the first human volley, 12 Dominion vessels were gone. On Coalition displays, ship after ship vanished from the tactical map. No explosion markers. No burning debris. They were simply there, and then they were not, erased by forces their every defense had been built to prevent and had never been built to stop. On the Dominion flagship, alarms began to sound. What is happening? One officer shouted. They're ignoring our shields, another said. The second human volley fired. 32 more ships disappeared. Admiral Vasquez watched the tactical display without expression. Maintain firing cycle, she said. Advance formation. The third volley struck before the Dominion formation had finished processing the second. Dominion losses crossed 100. Formation cohesion began to break. Ships attempted evasive maneuvers. Others rotated shields toward incoming fire, abandoning coordinated network patterns. That was the second mistake. Once the formation weakened, the Dominion lost its greatest advantage: synchronized defense. Human targeting adjusted immediately. Dispersed enemies died faster. On the Iron Dominion, alarms were no longer isolated. They were constant. "Commander, we are losing vessels faster than we can track." Coalition fleet advancing behind them. Enemy closing distance, point-blank range in 90 seconds. Varric stared at the forward display. 200 ships. Primitive by every technological measure the Dominion used. And they were dismantling a battle force that had conquered half the region. "Target their propulsion systems," he ordered. "Disable mobility." Dominion weapons adjusted. Hundreds of plasma lances focused on engine structures. The human ships glowed under the impact. Temperature readings climbed. But propulsion signatures remained stable. Their armor was not just thick. It was engineered. Thermal energy spread across the entire hull instead of concentrating at the impact point. Heat distribution systems vented excess load. Structural layers absorbed and dispersed stress in ways no Dominion engineer had ever designed for, because no Dominion engineer had ever needed to. Dominion doctrine was built around shield collapse. Once shields failed, destruction followed in seconds. Every weapon, every tactic, every formation had been optimized around that single assumed sequence. Human ships had no such failure point. They were designed to keep fighting while on fire. On coalition sensors, General Kethra zoomed in on a human cruiser that had taken continuous, concentrated fire for over 30 seconds. Hull integrity, 92%. "Nothing survives that kind of exposure," she said. "Unless it was built for it," Sierra replied. The fourth human volley fired. Dominion losses crossed 140. Formation cohesion collapsed entirely. Ships scattered across vectors, abandoning the synchronized defense that had made them invincible. In less than 4 minutes, the Dominion fleet had lost more ships than it had lost in the previous 3 years combined. And the human formation had not lost a single one. For the first time since the war began, the Dominion was not advancing. It was dying. The Dominion retreat did not begin as an organized withdrawal. It began as hesitation. Individual captains broke formation first, attempting to increase distance from the human firing line. Then hesitation spread, as it always does. One ship breaks, then the crews watching that ship break, and then the crews watching those crews. Coordinated shield networks collapsed as vessels maneuvered independently. Defensive overlap vanished. Targeting synchronization failed. The Dominion's greatest strength, disciplined through unified command, became its weakness the moment fear replaced order. On coalition displays, the enemy formation dissolved into scattered vectors. "They're breaking," General Kethra said. Her voice carried an emotion she clearly didn't fully trust yet. Coordinator Elandra watched the tactical map widen as Dominion ships accelerated in every direction. "They're not retreating," Sierra said quietly. "They're escaping." The human fleet did not pursue recklessly. It advanced with the same steady precision, firing in controlled cycles, eliminating the closest and most damaged vessels first. Each volley removed another cluster of ships. Dominion losses climbed past 200, then 250, then 300. Time since first human shot, for minutes. On the bridge of the Iron Dominion, Supreme Commander Varric watched his fleet disappear piece by piece. For 15 years, Dominion doctrine had been absolute. Formation above survival. Command above fear. Victory above loss. Now the tactical display showed the reality that no doctrine could deny. The enemy could not be stopped. He gave the order. All ships. Emergency withdrawal. Maximum jump range. Scatter pattern. For the first time in Dominion history, a full combat armada abandoned the battlefield. On coalition channels, the reaction came in waves. "They're retreating." Confirmed retreat. Dominion vessels entering jump preparation. Coordinator Elandra watched without speaking. Human fire did not slow. Any vessel that delayed even seconds vanished under kinetic impact. Some jumped immediately and survived. Others were destroyed before their drives could charge. By the time the last Dominion ship escaped beyond effective range, the battlefield had changed completely. 312 Dominion vessels destroyed. Over 100 more showing heavy damage signatures. Remaining forces scattered across multiple jump vectors. No organized formation. No remaining forward presence. Silence settled across coalition command. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Then the system-wide tactical summary updated. Enemy advance. Halted. System status. Secure. Coalition losses. Minimal. Human losses. 0. General Kethra read the final line twice. No losses. Confirmed, the analyst said. All human vessels operational. Minor thermal stress on outer hull layers. No structural failures. 612 ships against over 1,000. And not one human vessel destroyed. Coordinator Elandra lowered herself slowly into her chair. For 15 years, every battle report had ended the same way. Coalition losses. Dominion advance. System failure. This time, the enemy was gone. Admiral Vasquez transmitted a system-wide message. Clean. Direct. 5 words. Engagement zone secure. You may advance. No celebration. No declaration. No acknowledgement that 200 ships had just done what the entire coalition could not. Just information. And then, fragments of Dominion vessels drifted across the engagement zone. Reactor cores cooling, shattered hull sections tumbling through the void in absolute silence. For years, the Dominion fleet had been considered unstoppable. Now hundreds of their ships floated as wreckage. Cirrus stared at the debris field for a long time. They didn't stop them, he said quietly. He looked at Elandra. They broke them. How did you do that? The question came from Coordinator Elandra, through a direct channel to Admiral Vasquez, with the debris field still spreading across the tactical display behind them. It was not an accusation. It was the honest, urgent need of someone who had spent 15 years watching the impossible happen in the wrong direction and had just watched it happen the right way. Vasquez did not answer immediately. Instead, she asked a question. What is your standard fleet doctrine against energy weapons? General Kethra answered. Layered shield reinforcement. Distributed network density. Absorb and disperse incoming fire until the enemy overloads their own output. And if the shields fail? Vasquez asked. Then the ship is lost, Kethra said. Vasquez nodded once. That's your problem. She tapped something off-screen. A structural schematic appeared. A cross-section of a human warship hull. Layer after layer after layer of dense composite material surrounding the internal structure. It looked less like engineering and more like geology. Your ships are built around energy management, she said. Shield strength. Reactor output. Power distribution. Maximum energy efficiency. That is standard for all modern fleets, Cell replied. Yes, because everyone fights the same kind of war. She enlarged the image. Our ships are built around damage absorption. Kethra leaned closer. That thickness can't be accurate. It is. 10 meters of composite armor. Layered thermal dispersal structure. Heat distribution channels running through the entire hull. Internal structural reinforcement designed not to prevent damage but to survive it. That kind of mass would cripple maneuverability, Torvek said. It does, Vasquez agreed. And your energy efficiency would be terrible. It is. Then why build ships like that? Vasquez looked directly at them. Her voice was even, unhurried. The voice of someone explaining something they have understood for a very long time. Because shields fail. The chamber was silent. For thousands of years, she continued, every major power has followed the same cycle. Build stronger energy weapons. Build stronger shields to match. Increase power output. Increase reactor capacity. Each generation outpacing the last. Every civilization in this region has raced toward the same place from slightly different starting points. She changed the display. An energy beam striking a shield field. Energy shields work by dispersing energy across a surface. They reduce intensity by spreading the load. Every modern weapon is designed to overwhelm that dispersal, to deliver more energy than the shield can spread. She switched the image. A dense projectile approaching a shield field. The shield still disperses energy, she said. But it cannot remove mass. It cannot stop momentum. A shield is a system designed to interact with energy. Kinetic impact doesn't interact. It simply passes through. Cirrus spoke quietly. That's why your weapons ignored Dominion shields. Yes. And your armor survived their weapons because they were designed to destroy shields, not burn through layered physical mass. Yes. A slight pause. Their weapons are exceptionally good at what they were built to do. They simply weren't built to fight something like us. For 2 centuries, Cirrus said slowly, you let the galaxy believe your technology was inferior. Vasquez did not deny it. We stayed isolated for a reason, she said. We studied existing doctrines. Every major power relied on the same assumptions. Energy wins wars. Power output wins wars. The more advanced your energy systems, the more invincible you become. It is a logical conclusion if you're inside the arms race. And from outside it? Elandra asked. Vasquez looked at the debris field visible behind the display. From outside it, you notice that everyone is racing toward the same cliff. Silence. You were preparing for this, Elandra said. For a long time. Yes. Why didn't you intervene earlier? The Dominion has been expanding for decades. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Because if they had known what we could do, she said, they would have come for us first, before we were ready. And if we had revealed ourselves too early, to anyone, it would have spread. Changed doctrine. Given the Dominion time to adapt. She looked at Elandra directly. We needed them to believe we were irrelevant. Right up until the moment we weren't. The room understood immediately. Not just the tactical logic of it. The weight of it. 200 years of deliberate invisibility. Of ignoring every request. Declining every invitation. Appearing weak and isolated. While beneath that surface, building something the galaxy had never seen. Coordinator Elandra studied the human commander for a long time. There is one more question, she said. Vasquez waited. You said we would discuss terms after the engagement. Yes. Then what do you want? Vasquez looked past the coalition commanders, toward the tactical display showing Dominion retreat vectors, ships fleeing in every direction, scattered and broken and afraid for the first time. Then she spoke. We don't want payment. The chamber went completely still. We want an alliance, she said. Not temporary support. Not trade access. Not territorial concessions. She paused. An alliance. Because this battle didn't end the war. She looked at all of them. It changed it. The Dominion did not return to the Lyris system. For the first time in 15 years, their advanced timetable stopped updating. Reconnaissance confirmed what Coalition Command already suspected. Surviving Dominion vessels had scattered across multiple systems, reorganizing rather than regrouping. They were not preparing for a counterattack. They were trying to understand what had just happened. Admiral Vasquez did not give them time. The first target after Lyris was the Orion sector. Once the Coalition's primary agricultural network, occupied for 4 years and supplying 43 worlds. The battle lasted less than 6 minutes. The Dominion garrison fought using the same doctrine that had failed at Lyris. Their shields flared, and their ships died, and the surviving vessels attempted retreat. Most did not escape. Over the following months, the campaign moved faster than anyone had thought possible. The Dominion had built its power on fear. Once that fear was broken, really broken, with footage spreading across every civilian network showing dark human ships walking through Dominion fire and kinetic rounds punching through shields like they weren't there, the structure began to crumble. Systems defected instead of resisting. Supply routes failed. Entire sectors surrendered without engagement. The Dominion was learning to adapt. New designs appeared. Early kinetic countermeasures. Heavier armor on their own vessels. Evidence of captured human projectile fragments being reverse-engineered in surviving shipyards. But adaptation takes time. And Admiral Vasquez had understood from the beginning that time was the one resource she could not allow them. The war ended without a final battle. There was no last stand. No decisive confrontation over a burning world. Instead, the Dominion collapsed the way empires always do, slowly, then all at once. Negotiations began in the 3rd year. The terms were simple. All occupied systems returned, all forced populations released, military reduced to defensive strength only, no expansion beyond core territory. In exchange, the Dominion would not be destroyed. Their home systems would remain intact. Their people would remain sovereign. Many had argued for harsher conditions. The Dominion had enslaved billions, destroyed entire cultures, driven 7 species to the edge of oblivion. Admiral Vasquez had made the final recommendation. Punishment creates enemies, she had said. Survival creates partners. After 12 days of deliberation, the Dominion accepted. The war ended without another shot fired. 20 years after the Battle of Lyris, the system where the war had turned was a station. Massive, multi-species, home to millions of permanent residents from 37 different civilizations. Trade vessels from hundreds of worlds moved through its corridors. Children from former enemy civilizations attended the same schools. Alliance patrol ships moved through the region, but their purpose was peacekeeping now. Routine, almost boring, which was the best thing peacekeeping could be. On the central observation deck, two figures stood side by side, looking out over the traffic lanes below. Coordinator Elandra had retired years ago. Her successor now represented the Alliance Council, but she had returned for the anniversary. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood beside her. Older now, hair completely gray. Her uniform carried more years than decorations, and she wore it the same way she wore everything, without ceremony, without performance. For a long moment, neither spoke. Below them, a mixed crew guided a Dominion transport into docking position. No weapons powered. No escorts required. Just traffic control and routine clearance. Elandra watched it for a moment. "Do you remember what you told us the first day?" she asked. Vasquez smiled slightly. "Which part?" "That shields fail." Vasquez shook her head. "That wasn't the important part." She looked out at the station. At the ships moving freely between species that had once been at war. At the worlds that had survived. At something that had, against all probability, been built from the wreckage of what had seemed like the end. "The important part," she said, "was that surviving isn't enough." Elandra was quiet for a moment. "For 15 years, she said, "we were just trying not to lose." "Yes," Vasquez said. "And now?" Vasquez looked down at the docking bay, at the Dominion transport settling into its berth, at the mixed crew that guided it in. "Now you're building something worth keeping." Elandra turned to her. "Your species changed the war." Vasquez shook her head. "No," she replied. "We just refused to fight the same way everyone else did." "And why did you help us?" Elandra asked. "After 2 centuries of watching, after all that time, why did you answer?" It was a question that had been asked many times over the years, in interviews and memorials and history classes and late-night conversations. Vasquez gave the same answer she always had. "Because extinction isn't the natural outcome of a story," she said. "Giving up is." She looked back at the stars. Humans are stubborn. Far beyond the station, Alliance patrol fleets moved through former war zones where silence had once meant annihilation and now meant something entirely different. Trade routes stretched across sectors that had once been front lines. Worlds that had expected to disappear were growing again, their populations learning the strange and difficult art of building something instead of defending it. The galaxy was not peaceful. It never would be. But it was no longer